let's just jump right in. I'm going to try to get right to the meat of everything right away. But let's frame out some things about what we're going to talk about. Here's a little bit of an outline and bring into some sections. But we're going to be talking intervention strategies pretty much the whole time. And so I'm going to be throwing a lot of stuff at you. To get us really started, I'm going to suggest that if you really want to make this useful, have a problem on your mind. Better yet, if you want to get into real strategies, put that problem on paper right now. I'm going to take you through some strategies of how to take that problem, the problem you're thinking about as it relates to your children, maybe even yourself. Maybe there's some problem in your mind that keeps on coming up and you want to address it. But this is about building problem-solving skills in ourselves as parents, but also maybe in yourself as an adult that has some goals as well. So this is kind of the framework of our presentation. Would be appropriate to acknowledge what is metacognition. Metacognition, from a kind of a simplistic term, is the thinking about thinking. But what does that even mean? So I didn't even bother putting that down. What I want us to understand is metacognitive skills don't exist in isolation, right? Especially when we think about executive functions. They just don't. They're higher order thinking processes that involve the dynamic relationship between planning, monitoring, evaluating, in the constant cyclical relationship between those processes, cognitive processes, right? So that's really important for us to just acknowledge. And some of our children are having to plan and monitor and evaluate expectations that might be beyond their developmental age. Just want us to think that for a second, because maybe for a lot of the problems we have on our mind, they might not be ready to handle them because of their the lagging skills and the developmental delay of the metacognitive processes, okay? So just acknowledging that, we can then start to meet them where they are and help them develop conscientiously, deliberately, a problem-solving process that can meet their developmental needs more effectively, all right? So that just kind of acknowledging this is not easy processes for our brains to manage. Far less easy to do that, to go through a metacognitive process if we are stressed, overwhelmed, because that ends up kind of getting us out of our frontal lobe and out of our thinking mind and into our reaction kind of upstairs, downstairs brain, and gets us in kind of amygdala, kind of emotional hijack and dysregulated mind, which is where we don't want to be if we're trying to do any problem solving. So from transitioning from that, one thing I want us to kind of acknowledge as parents is sometimes the parents that take part in these trainings have a list of problems on their mind. They're children's problems, and they've somewhat taken on the burden of all of those problems. And I love this. This was a meme put out maybe too many years ago at this point, but it keeps on coming up. And it's a good recognition that we work super hard to help our children. And what I would like us to do in this training is to acknowledge that, but also start to say, how do I stop being my child's frontal lobe and working so hard at solving my child's problems and start to help them become the problem solver, right? And so this is hopefully a way of doing that. So when we're looking at certain problems that are typical in the raising of children, we can sit back and start to take the responsibility of the problems off of us and say, how do I start to nurture the relationship of these problems with my child, and so that they're facing them and working through that metacognitive process more deliberately and consistently as it relates to the management of their life, right? So whether it's issues with procrastination, whether it's issues with addictive like patterns of behaviors like excessive gaming, whatever it is, the ruminating that can be our tendency when we think about these problems. How do we stop that and start to initiate within our children the consistent problem-solving process, the metacognitive process of dealing with problems in their life, right? So, and there's, the list goes on and on. But what I would like you to do, for the sake of this conversation, is have a good idea of what problem might be on your mind. Maybe it's one of these. I came up with some that are pretty consistent, and in our discussions, because it's just helpful to frame that out. But the most, as we think about these problems, as we think about what we own and what we want our children to own, one thing that is hard to do, hard to do, is to pull back and to let our children struggle through these problems and embrace the opportunity that those struggles present in helping them grow, learn, and build these core cognitive processes. I'll give you, and this doesn't have to be for the big stuff in life, right? I have an example where I took my son fishing and his friends, and you know, I did this fishing when I was a kid. I don't really fish much nowadays, and they he and his buddies kept coming over to myself and the other dad and wanting us to do certain things, and I just kept having fun saying that's not my problem. You have to go figure that out. And some of it was like putting the fish on the little bait fish on the hook, and they didn't want to do that. Sometimes it was as big as taking the fish they caught and taking it off the hook. And I'd give them the pliers. I said, hey, go, no, it's your fish. You own the problem of getting it off the hook now. And at one point, my son had his head down, and I could see under his hat, I could see that he was starting to get worked up and emotional about the problem that I was giving him the opportunity to face. And so at that point, of course, I stepped in and helped him kind of get the fish hook out of the fish, and it was pretty hard to do. And so I ended up taking. So I took that, but he ended up looking up and he goes, "I'll do the next one, Dad," and he did. He did with the next fish he caught. He took the fish out of the hook and he worked through it. And that's just one example. But I think as we as parents try to take on the burdens and try to jump in and solve the problems in our children's life, we can actually start to be thoughtful about the many mundane problems, in a way, the one-off problems that we can relinquish responsibility for and give our children full opportunities to fail forward, as I like to say, right? So if we're able to do that, then I want us to kind of picture that in the game of life, our children have this opportunity to be the driver, right? So this car analogy is somewhat, will play out a little bit in this story. But if they're the driver, how do we keep them in the driver's seat, facing the journey and facing the decisions, facing the progress and lack of progress, facing the journey as a way to confront these challenges on their own and build these real important self-efficacy. I mentioned the other slide, is this notion that is this sense of belief, this sense of feeling that I can go out there and solve my own problems in my life. It's a really powerful term, self-efficacy. And you just don't have that. You build it, you nurture it, you develop it over time. And it is developed through failing forward, learning, growing, and most importantly, learning that I can solve problems that are meaningful in my life. And I can move forward even if I've fallen on my face 10 times, I can get up 11. And in this, so as we think about the struggles in our children's life, and we think about maybe these lagging skills, these developmental delays, but we also think about the meaningful problems that we are constantly having to work through. I want us to start by looking at helping our children build a roadmap. And this roadmap is a way of helping them to organize their thinking around what are try to make explicit the expectations, the values, the rules, the goals and expectations that frame out the family, frame out your vision for your child, and also their own expectations for themselves. And how does that roadmap create the boundaries and guideposts for their progress? And one way of doing that is, this is a lot of language. I wouldn't put this in front of too many young children, but what this does is it takes the implicit and makes it explicit. It takes the unknown and makes it known. right? It takes the kind of the rules of life that might be ambiguous and puts some boundaries and structure around it. And this can lead to all sorts of conversations that are two-way discussion around where are we going? Where are we going as a family? Where are we going as an individual? Where are we going as parents? Where are we going as a child? Where are we going in the roles and responsibilities that I play? And how do I use that answer, use all those answers as my roadmap and to guide me? And that's a big deal if I have attentional challenges, if I have dysregulation-like concerns, if I have meaningful executive function challenges or even metacognitive challenges that make it hard for me to consistently problem solve all the problems that are facing me. So I can minimize the problems by having a clearer roadmap of where I'm going. And this can be a two-way street. I bring my children to the story and into the conversation. And this can be as simple as morning routines can solve a lot of problems, right? As my child is becoming their own driver in their morning routines and evening routines, they're becoming their own driver in how I'm using working memory strategies to solve problems related to forgetting homework and things like that. These are just ways of starting to give myself anchoring my attention in a roadmap that allows me to move forward. It also, and this is a big deal, it also gives us a framework for dealing with the road hazards of life. They're always going to be there. And however, if I have a rather ambiguous picture of where I'm going, then it becomes harder to see the road hazards along the journey. Does that make sense? So the clearer my roadmap is, the clearer I can see the boundaries, the bumpers, the traffic signs, right? And the lines on the road. And so it makes it easier to acknowledge where the problems are because I'm off my morning routine, where the problems might be because I stopped using my planner today. And because I took a day off, I might be missing 3 assignments that I'm supposed to pass in tomorrow. So these strategies that become the roadmap and the bumpers to keep us moving forward, we're able to notice the problems a little easier and a little quicker and intervene on them. And in terms of how I've organized this hierarchy here from health, family, academic, social, there's somewhat of a hierarchy of priorities when we think about problems. And I'll get more into this as we think about parents. How do we start, what problems do we ignore? What problems do we deal with? And how do we have our own hierarchy? It's important to really teach our children when we do see problems in life, there's a hierarchy. Right? It's based on the priorities of life and how health is number one, right? And there's medical needs that we have to address. And there's ADLs of life, the activities of daily living that we can't ignore. And there's the family hazards that we have to really pay attention to because family matters. Family is extremely important. You know that because if someone's sick, it can weigh down, it can ruin your day because family matters. And then everything else that kind of goes after that follows in this hierarchy of priorities. So if we're able to do that, we're also able to help our kids start to really organize their thinking around, which is, again, to support metacognitive processing around planning, evaluating, executing, is what are the most important problems? What are problems? Well, problems have to do with things that get in the way of what we care about, right? Right. If I'm not meeting certain goals, expectations in my life, then that presents a problem. And so what is the hierarchy? Well, we can, within our own life as parents, we have to be clear around what this is as well. Because when we do address problems with our children, many parents will call me looking for coaching or support related to school. And they quickly hear in our coaching model that we just don't look at the school, we just don't look at the academic child, we look at the whole child, because managing priorities, managing responsibility, building executive function skills and metacognitive skills has to do with looking at all the priorities of life, right? And how I use this thought process and how I think deliberately around who I'm trying to be. I can't ignore the health of my life, right? And how that leads into family responsibilities. And I'm a kid, I may not have to worry too much for family because everybody's healthy, great. But then it gets into school, work, hobby, career, learning, and then the hobbies of life, which gets into the, maybe the distractions of gaming and cell phones and stuff like that. But I want to know what that is. And when I make my list of, as a parent right now, if you're thinking about this on paper, what are the problems that I'm paying way too much attention to? Because I think that they're the most top priority. But the truth is there's something bigger than that I'm ignoring. I don't know what to do with it, because that's why I'm ignoring it. That's okay. Just acknowledging that as step one. And then as a parent, maybe I can thoughtfully and deliberately start to put interventions in place, and maybe this training will help. So if I've been able to do that and kind of think of these hierarchy and think of certain problems that are on my mind related to my children, then let's jump into, if I were to take these problems that are on my mind and I want to start really deliberately helping my children to own them and work through them, let's start getting into some real cool strategies. And these work for us. This isn't about our children. This is about just living, right? Just functioning. So as adults, these are really cool strategies as well that we should use in our own life, whatever problems that we're trying to face. One is a learning journal, and learning journal, the premise of it really has everything to do with how I think about my own thinking on paper, and how powerful that is and effective that is. And I'll give you some strategies of how to do that. And the other one is how thinking aloud is another powerful. That's related somewhat to maybe I would say a cousin of self-talk. As a strategy for mental health, positive self-talk being the term, and then applying mental models, giving our children kind of a schema to organize their thinking around a mental model around a process of thinking about problems can be really helpful. And I'll give you a suggestion there as well. And then using tools of thoughts, which is a little more abstract. I don't talk too much about that, but it's worth geeking out on if you're interested. Journaling, let's just get into the journaling, the process of writing and think. It doesn't have to be, preferably it's writing, but some kids can't read their own handwriting, and that's a bigger topic, but maybe you have to model for them and do the writing for them. But this strategy is pretty cool. There's a lot out there, a lot of journaling strategies. It doesn't have to be complicated. What it does have to do, what it has to really factor in is in this case, what's working, what's going well, right? And what didn't go so well. And that might be related to the day, it might be related to the week. And then there's this part where I says, what's my action plan? Right? What do I want to do next? And this can be done on a Sunday night when you help your child think about the week. This can be related to each day as you think about how my day went, what's left undone in my day, and what might need to happen for tomorrow. It's a real simple process, but what it does, it really gives us as a parent structure in the conversation. But it also gives us a chance to teach a strategy that allows our children to think more deliberately. And that's important because a lot of our children might have ADHD, and there's this emotional component to ADHD where emotions override logic. And if I were to train my child on breaking that negative pattern that is very typical for many successful people with ADHD, is I have to learn how to break that emotional dysregulation, those moments where I let my emotions drive my decision making all the time, and I need logic at my side. And this is a process that helps me think logically around who I'm trying to be, what's getting in the way, and what's my action plan. Okay. The other one is how think aloud can help also break any type of distracting thought patterns and emotional thought patterns that are overriding logic as well. Helping our children to think through their thought process is very, very, very grounding. It's hard to do as a parent if you can't remove the emotionality of the topic, but it's very helpful if you can. And there's this nonverbal verbal relationship that plays out that I'm not going to get into. I did that training months ago, but it is very important from a developmental standpoint that giving our children a framework to just think out loud. What's on your mind? What's your decision-making process here? Gives them a chance to make decisions more conscientiously. As a teacher, I'll do this all day long. I have these couple kiddos that really struggle to initiate the work in front of them. But as soon as I take out a piece of paper and I say, okay, what's on your mind? And I say, what's from your mind related to math? And I kind of write down what's from your mind. And I said, go through every subject, and I turn the paper around and I put it in front of them. And I say, okay, what do you want to do about this information? And then he looks at the paper and he starts making excellent decisions. but it was getting all that information out of kind of and nonverbal working memory, the muddleness of the images and the ideas of things, and making it concrete is what he needs help with. And now I'm at a point where I'm modeled enough that I'm showing him how to do it. I'm giving him sticky notes, each one representing a class, to do that process. And so it's easier to do as a teacher because the emotionality is not there, right? It's very obviously kind of a professional relationship. But what is really helpful, if you can do this and maintain a connection with your child, is you can help them the same way, right? This learning model is pretty cool. There's two examples I'm going to share with you, right? It's a way of helping our child. The term is temporal discounting, but it's not something I'd hang on to if I were you. But what we are talking about in this kind of this model is helping our children tap into their future self by pausing and thinking about it's really a power of regret, but will my future self regret the decision I could make right now? Right? And having that moment where I bridge the gap between the present moment, right? Maybe the emotional decision-making moment, and the future of who I'm trying to be, I might find myself being more successful in the decisions I'm making, right? So can I have that kind of moments with my child? Can I help them pause for a second and reflect on their future self? Cool. Imagine doing that 1,000 times. Would your child get better at interrupting those emotional decision-making moments with a more of a thoughtful, conscientious, more future mirroring decision? The other part to that, because you can do both of these strategies, is this 10-10-10 method on decision making, and this gets a little bit more robust and therefore harder to practice. But if I were to look at my future self and I were to say, really 3 questions, right, related to what is the consequence of this decision in 10 minutes, and that's cool because if I can interrupt one more Netflix episode, I've just saved my 10-minute future self from dealing with the regret and the emotion, the consequence of that decision, right? What's the consequence 10 months from now? Now, I would say for many of our kids, we're just dealing with 10 minutes. As we get to be, upper high school, maybe college being a big deal, is we should be looking 10 months out in terms of the classes and the sequence of classes related to the degree, related to the credits, related to the diploma. And as adults, we get this 10-year piece. But this is really cool because it's the ongoing, for those that do struggle with time blindness, this is a really important exercise to continue to strengthen the relationship, the cognitive relationship and emotional relationship to time. Because it exists, I just haven't really strengthened my relationship with it in a meaningful way as it relates to the decisions I'm making, breaking that emotional logic relationship. Okay, I am flying through stuff, and if I was someone in the audience that's hearing this for the first time, my head might be spinning. Should I pause? Because I'm about to jump into 2 other strategies that are extremely helpful when dealing with problems in the moment. And people have questions. All right, cool. Well, it's being recorded, so we can always go back and watch something and review and rewind and double check. Okay, so there's 2 strategies I want to talk about at this point. I would say, I would say strategy. The proactive and reactive strategies, so they can be used for both. But I'm going to start with the collaborative and proactive solutions first. Dr. Ross Green, he's actually local to me. He's in Massachusetts, and he's pretty well known for his relationship with MGH. I'm pretty sure in the past, and he was the author of a book called The Explosive Child. It's been around forever, but he's also He's just amazing man, and puts so much content out there for free on his website. It's called Lives in the Balance. So his interventions have to address the more explosive, to say the big emotions in our children. And so this process is really helpful when we're dealing with big emotions and real meaningful problems that do require our intervention, maybe in the moment or even after the fact, to help our children that might have big emotions and need real strategic input from us as parents to help them work through it. And there's 3 different parts to this that you're just not going to get right now, but I'm going to introduce it. They got some videos to kind of give you to take away. But first and foremost is super hard for us as parents to separate the emotion of a behavior and of a problem that is confront with us. It could be a slamming of a door. It could be the swearing at us when we ask them to do something. It could be whatever can cause the tension between the parent and the child. It's hard to break that. If you can, then you can do step 1. And step 1 is just try to connect with my child, right? And the step 2 is define the problem. And then step 3 is an invitation. And let's kind of role play what this can look like through a couple of examples. A good example is getting overwhelmed and how that can lead to a temper tantrum. If it's a child, we'll call it a temper tantrum. If it's a big child, we'll call it an adult temper tantrum. Either way, what it can be very helpful is if the child is receptive to the interaction, meaning they're enough in their frontal lobe where they might be able to process information. If they can't, then they need to find space and take a time out until they calm down. But if they can go through this process, first thing to do is just to acknowledge what's going on. I notice you're struggling. What's up? And you kind of let that statement hang there. And you hang there, and your energy is one of empathy and trying to connect. No judgment. Like, what do you mean, David? No judgment? I know it's really hard to do this. But if you can, no judgment. Just acknowledge that your kid is struggling in that moment. Nothing to do with you. What's up? If they're able to engage in this, then they're going to say something. And they may not even know what's up. But the second thing is for you to try to define the problem. Like, what is the problem? My concern is, right? I notice that you're getting pretty overwhelmed. I see you stomping your feet and yelling at your sister. My concern is that you may upset her. You may say something you're going to regret. Okay? And if you can get through this conversation in a really in a grounding kind of way, then your third piece is going to be really an invitation to work through the problem. Right? But it's going to be putting your child still in the driver's seat of the problem. You haven't intervened with a higher level of emotion. You haven't implemented any demands and directives and dictatorial-like commands. You're just trying to help your child stay in this type of metacognitive process to see if they can work through the problem and how you can help them through it. Okay? And now imagine you can do this for the first 100 times and your child may struggle with this process. Over time, they're going to get better as long as you're consistent in how you confront whatever the problem is. Now, I wouldn't practice the first 100 times on a real trigger type topic. Just wouldn't. Pick the lower topics. Like, clothing left in the bedroom floor, toothpaste cap left off of the toothpaste, right? Pick something that has no emotional barometer whatsoever and use that as your trial, your practice, right? So, but the point is you're first trying to connect on the problem. I notice you're still struggling. I notice you're struggling to wake up on your own. What's up with that? What's going on? And you know how there's 1,000 other ways to deal with that moment, right? And we know that. We've done them all. It's just we're trying to get out. We're trying to stay out of the driver's seat, right? and keep our child present to the problem and work them through the conversation and the cognitive pieces that relate to the decision making, the thinking, the evaluating, the reflecting, and then the maybe I can make some decisions on what I want to try to do differently. Cool. I would honestly just go to the website, livesinthebalance.org. That's the little picture in the corner there is actually Dr. Green, but he has a tremendous amount of information on there. A lot of this stuff can relate to the school as well. I've never seen this done in the school, and I don't know why I haven't, because it's so effective that anyways, there's a lot of opportunities here if there's bigger problems in the schools, if there's bigger problems in the home, and how this type of process can help you and your family and your child develop skills. He talks about lagging skills. He talks about unmet expectations. He talks that every child could do well. Every child could do well if they can. Would do well if they can. It's excellent. The second strategy is very similar, but different. So I'm going to share it with you and see how this one relates to you and the problems that are on your mind, right? So this is not, this type of strategy is great for any behaviors. But this was developed for classroom interventions and building metacognitive skills in the classroom for teachers. Teachers do the same thing we do as parents. They get in and they solve every problem. Right, every child, 20 kids in the room, and their executive function skills are on overload, trying to make sure they're monitoring every child's potential problems. Right, this type of training is a way of getting teachers to stop doing that and to help their child to face the problems on their own and learn how to cope and manage and make decisions more effectively. So there's really three parts to this that are very similar to the other model, but three parts, but the starting point's a little different, and how you work through it is a little different, but same goal is the developing problem-solving skills, right? But basically, is what you're going to start to do is you're going to use language around acknowledging what the barriers are. I use barriers or obstacles, but barriers being a key term in this terminology, and then those barriers and how that relates to strategies. Right, and how those strategies can lean into interventions and a plan of support. Okay, so for example, you have these again three parts. What's the intervention, aim, or goal? So first of all, to really make this work, you have to help your child know what their goal is. What's your goal? That's a big difference in this piece. Sorry, guys, you hear my dog. I put him away so you wouldn't hear him. You have to help your child understand their aim, their goal, and that helps tremendously with children that have attentional challenges, hyperactivity. Is the always reminding of what's my intention? Where am I going in this moment? Oh, I'm going to the bathroom to brush my teeth and take a shower. Oh, I'm supposed to be going upstairs, getting ready for bed. Oh, I'm supposed to be making my lunch, and I'm supposed to make my breakfast. What's my goal in this moment? Second thing is, what are the barriers impeding progress towards that goal? The third thing is, what strategies? I love that term, strategies. I think if our children were always talking strategies, then they would always be feeling like they can solve their problems. So what is the strategies? Or another word for that would be solutions. What are the strategies to overcome the barriers? Barriers should be the better word, should be an S there. And then it may lead into the action plan related to that. So let's see here. One example, here's a problem. I'm struggling to complete and pass in my assignments on time. So to know, okay, if that's the struggle, let's frame it as a goal. What's my goal? What am I trying to achieve? What barriers are in the way, and what strategies can I implement that will help me remove each barrier? Okay. Now, the cool part about this process is it can be very paper-based, and therefore it can be very grounding. And this goes back to journaling, right? This strategy is aligned with the journaling process. is I help my child think through these problems as they're in the driver's seat owning them, and how I could use sticky notes, I can use index cards, I can use a blank sheet of paper, and I can make 2 columns, and I can start thinking about, I'll go back to that in a second, but I can start thinking about, what is my goal? Well, my goal is to submit everything on time. Are you sure that's your goal? Yeah, it's my goal. I'm noticing that it's hard for me to keep up. So I really want to learn how to submit everything on time. Okay, that's our goal. Awesome. What are the barriers? And you can have a list of obstacles, a list of roadblocks. I like roadblocks because it goes in my car analogy, my driving analogy. Roadblocks. And then related to each roadblock might be its own strategy, its own solution. So I have roadblocks are barriers, strategies, barriers, strategies, barriers, strategies. But then I might notice that of the list of strategies and the sticky notes that I might have put down, there's some common strategies that can tackle many barriers. Cool. The outcome from that is that I can now take those strategies and implement a plan of action to help overcome them. And that's it. So another example, I'm struggling on math quizzes. This is very specific, very focused, but a lot of our kids, at least kids that I tend to work with, throughout the school, throughout the days, is study skills. Kids that really struggle on the taking learning and demonstrating understanding. So and so many children just don't like math, right? So it's a good topic to deal with and help our children focus on and build the belief and build this self-efficacy through focusing on something like this. So what's the goal? My goal is maybe to do better in math. And so my goal is to achieve honor roll in math. That's a noble goal, to B- or higher. Awesome. I'm glad you're reaching for the stars on this. So let's talk about what the barriers could be, and this discussion that I'm having with my mom or dad around what are the big things getting in the way of achieving that goal. And the sense of ownership, the sense of agency. My teacher sucks. My teacher never listens to me. I just hate math. I suck at math. I hate doing all of these excuses become the barriers and roadblocks. How cool is it to make that known? And then what are the strategies that might relate to that? And can I do that 100 times with my child? And can I build this is just literally a piece of paper, make a line in the middle, barriers, strategies. Barriers, strategies. And on the top of it, you write the goal. What are we working towards? And make the goal. Don't pick the heaviest topic to start this process. Pick something that's consistent, but it's really your child's goal. It's really something that they want to own, and start there. And then just think about doing this 100 times. For any one of these strategies, any one of them, the research will say that any one of these strategies can work. The hardest part for any of us functioning adults is the consistent application of these strategies until we have them internalized. Okay, so kind of come back to my initial pictures, right? I notice your room's not cleaned yet. What's up? I know your goal. So that goes to the collaborative, proactive solutions. Now, from a activated learning, I know your goal is to do better in school. That must be hard for you. I notice you are still on your phone. What's up? I know your goal is 1 hour of gaming a night. Either strategy can lead to my child in the driver's seat, building their own interventions, building their own strategies, solving their own problems, and owning it. We as parents just have to step into the passenger seat and guide them through certain processes that allow them to, over time, right, build a cognitive framework of how to see problems more deliberately. I know your goal is to improve remembering what you need to do. It must be frustrating to keep forgetting. Let's brainstorm some obstacles that are getting in the way. Let's decide on some strategies to help overcome those obstacles. All right, cool. You make a list. Doesn't have to be complicated. Sticky notes on the wall are excellent. And you're constantly helping your kid think through these problems by just sticky notes on the wall, 2 different colors. Maybe a whiteboard somewhere. This is the classic one. This is great. Our kids can look stuck so often. I'm noticing that you look stuck. It's just acknowledging whatever the stuckness is, whatever the behavior, whatever it looks, it could be a behavior of sorts that's more observable, not just a kid with his head down. But even a temper tantrum is someone that looks stuck. They look stuck making a better decision or dealing with their emotions in a more appropriate way, but they still look stuck. Right? So just acknowledging that you look like you're making, that you want to be doing something, you want to be doing better. Okay, I've covered everything metacognitive, everything problem solving, and maybe none of it was helpful. Hopefully some of it was. Maybe you have to go back and review pieces of it and say, okay, this is, as a parent, this is what I'm going to practice with my child. But is there a specific problem that you have in your mind that, like, David, just help me through this one? Let me know what your thoughts are. Let's tackle it.